I think one of the most important insights is that alignment is really a recursive practice. So it requires consistently going back and reviewing it. And that's both individually within a team and then from a larger organization, assuming that the team is part of a larger organization. And so those three kind of cycles, and then you can even cycle it up and say, all right, how is this organization aligned with local neighborhood alignment or planetary alignment or whatever scale makes sense. So there's various layers of this, but it's basically the same process, just with slightly different questions and maybe slightly different cadences on when those questions are re-asked and re-evaluated. At least from where I'm considering it, seems like probably quite a simple tool to build out and prototype, certainly in terms of a feature set that has a set of questions, both qualitative and quantitative, that's quite easy to answer on a mobile device, and then visualized in an easy way so that you get a bit of a sense of how things are aligning. The more complicated piece seems to be how do we then embed that in maybe the meeting context specifically.
There's different scales. When I think about, and I appreciate you, I'm having to reload my short-term memory. We talked about context switching. We use this time having to reload specs that we're working on. And when I was thinking about alignment initially, I was thinking, Ikigai. I was thinking more like a job search. Search the relevant jobs, and then you reframed it as alignment within the team and company, which is of course where we were talking about last week. And then you narrow this, and in a sense, that's a narrowing of scope. And anything's possible to, yes, what are you going to do within the company? Of course, that's a really important part as well, because even when you find a job and you've got stable economic situation, you don't necessarily feel aligned if you can't negotiate or organize with the manager of what to do. And so you join a company that kind of inspired you. If you look like you were on day one, or just before day one, there's the peak of inflated expectations of your job. And then this hype cycle of peak of inflated expectations going to the trough of disillusionment. And that when I was then thinking about alignment in company as something that you would deal with your manager and your person, and then you were reminding me that we started this meeting and do you need them? And that's in a sense narrowing the scope even more. I was like, what's the point of this meeting? And it occurs to me that all three of those scopes are valid, and that an ineffective, and that if you're misaligned in too many meetings, it'll throw you off on your company career level. And they're just different scopes, like the micro to the macro scope. But maybe there is a tool, maybe there is something that we could do that would be relevant at all of those scopes. We started the research on the meetings, and just, does this meeting need to happen? What are we here for? What are the goals? What are the tensions?
Yeah, it seems that probably, at least from the research that I've been doing, probably the easiest place to start in terms of sequencing this, and certainly not to discount other possibilities, but based on our conversation, focusing on teams, 3 to 5 people that are already operating, and support them on alignment, and actually provide a tool that supports them pre-meeting. So helps them align on if this meeting is important, and if so, like, what is the agenda? Even from the outset, if you can reduce the meeting size or reduce the meeting length and have a more efficient agenda, you can see how quickly that would add value in a lot of teams, a lot of organizations. And it seems that the alignment is the key piece to allow that to happen effectively. And so at a tool that provides this kind of recursive alignment system that keeps individuals aligned, teams aligned, and then the organization aligned as much as possible. So, yeah.
Thanks. Correct. That's in fact, that's even narrowing the scope further to stable teams, 3 to 5 people, as opposed to these big 25 meetings, drop-off with people. But if we start with the type of scope thing,
Yeah, so that feels pretty fertile for me. And then I think it's a matter of like, all right, maybe there's some folks we can talk to and rapid prototype to see if the idea is even of interest, or if they're like, nah, you know what, this isn't actually an issue. We wouldn't pay for it. This isn't going to save time. This will probably just take more time. Or it might be, yeah, we're interested. We've already done aspects of this. The information's a bit fragmented. We've already got some stuff that can plug into this, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not sure if I think on the last call you mentioned you might have some folks in and around your circles that might be some good early kind of users of something like this.
It's still reframing.
You're still being reframed.
Okay,
Ooh,
I fixed
all
that.
right.
That was a mix up. There were two levels of it. There's the Max doing it small.
Wow, you have it in double reframe.
This is the platform. Max
There you
cool.
go.
Is the natural levels. I certainly do have plenty of colleagues who have crafted something that would be delighted something that we could do to deflect some of that. Great. Okay, good. Good. I did look at my homework. I did my classic move that I've been doing since I was a child, which is looking to see what homework would be just slightly before class. And I didn't do my homework, but I did just before class do a remedial action of pinging this friend of mine who built a product on that started guided a minute practice. So it'll be good to reconnect.
Okay, yeah,
So
awesome. That's okay. I went one step further. I didn't even look at my homework. So, so we're real good on that front. I wasn't expecting this one to be that productive anyway.
Yeah. So there is a relevant research paper that I mentioned about team flow.
Yeah.
So I will find that paper to share it. I say it's one of my bits of homework was to take that paper and feed it into the LLM to understand its applicability to this project. But the basic theme of it was that that to get team flow, you need to be alignment is critical. The team with shared ambitions. That's important. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, no,
validation.
it strikes me that a lot of things probably stem from alignment, because you could say team flow happens when you have trust and playfulness and all of these other things. And yet it feels like downstream of that, feeling quite aligned with everyone in the room is probably a good foundation for all of that anyway.
And the paper was arguing that there need to be clear individual ambitions and team ambitions. You need to figure out how to align those.
Yeah.
And those are relatively stable as well. So the benefit of that is that it wouldn't require a team to revisit this, especially a stable team. It wouldn't require a team to revisit this all that often. And it's trying to schedule a meeting for people or somebody in a group of 4 people immediately. And a friend there sent us a doodle that we probably use doodle occasionally for the it's a good tool to have to use occasionally. Now that might work against the idea of something that's easily commercializable. So depending on how often the team use it. Doodle's a good example of something you don't usually need to use all that time, but it's quite helpful when you do something that is not really.
Yeah, it strikes me that the alignment aspect, once you do it the first time, you probably don't need to review it that often, like maybe quarterly or half quarter or twice a year, once a year even. However, the information that is in there is valuable in providing that broader context for meeting agendas and keeping the team efficient with that time through the whole piece. And it also strikes me that with this system, we could probably have these alignment documents kind of updated and synthesized based on conversations, so a little bit more automatically, and then be reviewed periodically to make sure that is actually correct based on what we've been synthesizing.
Also notice, when I'm thinking about the document that you shared, the Telos document.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that can is as new missions creep up organically that are not on board. And if you have a way to surface that, hey, this thing seems to be bubbling up as a serious project, and give everybody conscious awareness, is this or is this not your top 5 company project? This one feels not aligned, not coherent with your original plan, but it certainly has some momentum now with multiple people working. Sanity check, right? So we go back and review. It also occurs to me now that, and thanks for letting me know about the background noise. There was something in my short-term that came into my short-term memory. This stand-up philosopher that I was mentioning, his dad was a professor of philosophy as well, political science, and pioneered this thing called deliberative democracy. And it's short-term memory because I was just reading about it. The idea is that there's a lot of polling done to assess people's opinions about different things. And what his research showed is that you poll people about a topic, and then get them into a small group with an expert or a group of experts, and then allow them to talk and discuss and share ideas with their peers for free. And then you poll them on the same subject. Their answers to 70% of the questions are significantly different than they were before. So go figure, thinking about something and talking about it leads to people's minds changing. And so there's this weird tension in democracy that theoretically we don't let the people choose. But we know that the people are generally not advocating issues, what the tensions are and so forth. And so you have this game in democracies where some influential class of decision makers tries to manipulate public opinion to that's the game as opposed to really bring up the level of reason intelligence that we, and that's not, that's obviously a few steps away from our app, but it occurred to me that the alignment problem is not that different. If you think about a meeting as a deliberation process where you're trying to bring different concerns and viewpoints to bear on something. But then it occurred to me that generative AI would feel like a really helpful way to allow people, certainly if you want to constrain it to, can you do it on a mobile form factor, to allow people to have a little bit of discussion and contemplation, private discussion and contemplation about the agenda for the meeting before the meeting, the meeting prep side. As you had said in your research, meeting prep is typically underserved. Yeah, note-taking tools out there, whatever, but meeting prep is a gap. But even like a morning review, like these are the meetings that you got today. Let's look at, I'm gonna look at your calendars. And okay, here are the meetings you got. This one's about this. What are your concerns? This one's about that. What are your concerns? Having a little conversation with somebody about those meetings, and then being able to bring that to the group in the meeting. Like these are the things we want to watch out for. These we know these concerns are arising, and there's some anonymity. Perhaps the Gen AI tool can bring a bit of anonymity if we word things, whatever else. Hopefully, still respecting the concerns of all the members sort of aggregate. And obviously, they're specialized in that kind of synthesis.
Yeah, this idea of a dynamic agenda is jumping out in terms of review the agenda before the meeting, but actually maybe there's a few kind of questions, both qualitative and quantitative, that you can anonymously or otherwise like input into, so that agenda is dynamically formed by the attendees of the meeting. And then even potentially throughout the meeting, there could be a point like, all right, we're at this point of the agenda now, and then the questions are sent individually to the phone, so you can like input some kind of response. Like this idea of what's the word? Not confidence, but when you're waiting your confidence on an answer. What's the word? It'll come to me anyway, but basically putting a number to like how confident that you are, this is a good way to go or a good decision to make. And then actually just having a slide of being like, yeah, look, I'm 50% happy with this, I'm 80% happy with this. And then you have a bit of a group mind on that rather than talking about it the whole time. You actually just get to put a figure on it. The other thing that some friends were just sharing with me the other day is an app they use called ScreenZen. And it's a little bit like one of those app blocking tools, but instead of blocking the apps, what it does is it puts in some time before. If you say you're having an issue with social media, it still allows you to open it, but then it prompts you to breathe beforehand. And so you can actually set like, all right, a 10-second timer for you to breathe in and out, and you can set that to a minute or so. And these guys were saying that they had a real issue with certain apps before. And then this thing just put in that bit of spaciousness beforehand that allowed them the time to reflect on like, actually, is this what I want to be doing with my time right now? Or is this an important priority right now? So even the way that we're approaching our way of meeting, we've embedded some time for mindfulness in there. And it strikes me that there's already this app out there that seems to be working quite well. So ScreenZen might be worth checking out. I'm going to play around with it this week and see if that has much of an impact. But it strikes me that could be another simple little feature to put into this. But yeah, certainly, I think there's lots of features to potentially explore. But at least in my experience, the simpler the tools to start off with that really provide a value add, the better to start with.
ScreenZen's addressing a real problem.
Sorry?
And we're just because ScreenZen is addressing a real problem. And our app would be addressing a problem as well, which is what the point is. So there's also a parallel between Agenda Buddy or whatever it's going to be called for the meeting, but also it was a daily rhythm, like a 5-minute call with Agenda Buddy in the morning, and it goes over your daily agenda. It's sort of like presidents. I was working with a tool called Bordy, which you have a call with basically, I'm looking at another guy, but basically the app will call you and you have a conversation with who you want to meet, networking. And so you could have a morning call that's like your daily agenda. Talks you through any meetings that are new, or if you want to talk about the agenda, then you can zoom in on any link that you put in the structure.
So it feels like there's a bit of a decision we can explore making now is, does this tool serve the individual or does it serve the collective? And not that they have to be mutually exclusive in any way, but it strikes me that could be quite an early decision that would really inform the tool that's built.
It feels like it needs to address the collective. It really wants to address this issue of alignments in teams. That's a very fruitful area, and it's very central to how I'm thinking as well, to sort of move beyond the individual scope to the social scope. I was just thinking that the daily agenda planner, the reason I was thinking about that is you will need some way to get people into the room. You need some value that gets people to use the tool. And it could be, but that's a viral spread tool as well. It's like if one person's using it in a meeting and they want to say, hey, can I ask you guys to feed into this agenda tool? And people contribute agendas for one meeting that they're concerned about, and it's designed to take like 3 minutes or 2 minutes. Then they may, that's an opportunity to sign up, and maybe there's some additional value Did you like this? Was it helpful? Do you use this for your future meetings? Is it a spread?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it seems at least the marching orders for homework this week is really to explore the agenda market and both individual and collective, because it seems like I'm not aware of any particular tool. I haven't been invited to any particular tool that is in this vein. It strikes me as quite a powerful one. And I do the kind of embedded social viral aspect to it as well. So rather than it being pitched at maybe whoever's managing the teams or corporate head office or whatever, you actually have individuals starting to use it and then it can scale up. So it's more bottom up rather than top down. Obviously be both, but yeah.
The central argument can be, meetings with no agendas tend to be less satisfying based on time. Clear agendas tend to be more effective than saver based. Save time, look at everybody's, get everybody's concerns addressed, stuff like that. So there's a lot of compelling arguments attached to this. There will be certain people who are super spreaders. There will be people whose personality. Look, there's some people who ask, "What's the agenda for this meeting?" And are really a bit conscientious about that for whatever reason. Those are our initial target. But this is basically a way for those people to spread to their peers. So they're already completely convinced, and they know viscerally how much time is wasted. I'm thinking of one of my previous coworkers who's very organized woman. She's I feel like she would insist on everybody who attends her meetings, or every meeting she's asked to attend, she'd insist on people like putting this in. If you want me to attend the meeting, you have to fill this in. Tell me why you want it. And there's a number of venues where that would be useful, including a calendar-like thing, right? So there's often the calendar will have a question, like, what are we meeting about? Pretext to it. And that might be enough, but if somebody is really, but if it was an easy enough user interface, you might offer a little bit more information into that thing and use that.
Yeah, it also strikes me that there's already some instances where agendas are already the standard practice. So a lot of public listed companies, by virtue of their requirements, they need to have agendas. So I'm curious to see if maybe there's like board level meetings that inform publicly listed companies. They have to list their agendas, they have to list their meeting minutes and things like that. So there's a whole bunch of data and knowledge we can already pull from and see if there's some huge kind of alignment gains that can be gained from having more effective agendas and alignment within those. So it seems like the agenda is, I'm not sure how many people walking around and be like, oh, I need to feel more aligned, but a tool like the agenda thing naturally creates more alignment as you use it more and more. So it strikes me as potentially the tool to bridge it a bit.
Board level meeting, I'm a little bit more skeptical about board level meetings because they are, like in most companies, get so much attention from the executive team, and they're so carefully orchestrated that they're getting enough attention. There's so few of those and so infrequent, relatively, that they're not the primary time waster. So I'm a little skeptical about pitching that as a use case, but it's all the other things that are more chaotic and on the aggregate a bigger. I'm feeling it might be beneficial to write down some of these conclusions or thoughts just so we capture those in the future and do some like a little writing phase at this point, or how are you thinking?
Yeah, I was just thinking taking the transcript from this call and getting a summary and then making the notes on that. I know you didn't quite get a chance to post last meeting's call, but yeah, even just pulling the transcripts from our conversations, the times we've met so far, I think would go a long way in rather than necessarily posting the video for 4 minutes. You're still on mute.
I've made it up for myself tomorrow to send you. I know it's recording. I'll have to run it through. I'm not on a premium plan on Meet, so I don't get the transcription built in here. Although I have one, so we could, with Living Code, I have one, so we can feature Living Code app. It's the transcript.
Yeah, I think like even if you just upload it to YouTube, then there's tools that kind of pull the transcript from YouTube. So there's ways to work with it. Yeah, so at least from my perspective, my like homework's pretty clear. Understand what the agenda landscape is like at the moment and what kind of tools are out there right now. I think I feel pretty confident that whatever is out there, we could probably build a tool out in the next few weeks and get it in front of some people and yeah, get some kind of runs on the boards with it. And I think again in the background we have that kind of alignment problem that we're really solving for, and the agenda piece is the first place to start with it. And then you can see how that could scale towards the scheduling side of things. It could scale towards the meeting kind of guidance piece as well. So once you've got some confidence in the agenda setting piece, that would obviously be able to lead into maybe co-facilitating meetings as well down the track as well. So it strikes me as like a good place to start. And agendas are often overlooked, even in our own practice. Maybe what we could do for our next call as well is we could try to come up with an agenda. I'd say maybe what we could do as homework is we both individually come up with an agenda, and then we ask our AI tools to come up for an agenda for us, and then we can review that and see like what the disparity is between the individual agendas that we set, the agendas that kind of models would suggest, and then what's in the middle.
I'm writing out our homework here. So,
Awesome.
Um, I really still reflect on your use of AI and what is our biggest problem in that meeting. And this hybrid intelligence approach, which there's a general principle that you adhered to. I call it general principle, but you adhere to the presentation, which is think first before prompting.
Yeah.
So think then prompt, basically. And this is still adherent. This is still adherent. And so I will give myself also to get all transcription. Because the raw transcripts can also be useful for the Gen AI stuff.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting comparative to see what's suggested. But yeah, ultimately, yeah, starting with thinking first is it's a good way to go, rather than just blind prompts, because you can very quickly get off in very unrelated, irrelevant rabbit holes, which at times is fun. But I don't know about you, but I'm excited to start building something so we can start share like part of our thinking and conversations with at least our initial circle.
I love what you did with Lifetime, and I was just I did my Lifetime thing just before the call.
Awesome! Yeah,
it's posted on your site, and I just did share it with a few folks, a few groups. It's perfect. This is the time to go over the
yeah, exactly. We've only really shared it with a small group of family and friends, and we just built it as a little tool to explore what we could build quickly. And it's been really beautiful to see what's come back so far. And yeah, we've already had, I think, over 600 hours reserved, which, like, from our perspective, is incredible to think that this little tool that we just brought together the last couple of weeks has now potentially created over 600 hours of life-changing time in a sense. That's, for us, it's a really easy measure of success, even though like it's not something that is generating financial value for us. It's definitely something that feels like a really worthwhile tool to invest a bit of time in. And it's the 600 hours that have been reserved. Now, whether or not they're all that all eventuates or not, is still far outweighs the time that we've invested in putting it together. It's for us a really good measure of success, actually.
That's actually super fun to think about the leverage of your time versus. It's a smart idea. It's good. It's really a smart idea. And to condense down to one action, one reservation. It's basically strengthening this. It's creating a positive feedback loop between aspiration and action.
Yeah.
An aspiration at a highly aspirational time of the group.
Yeah. Totally. Exactly. And yeah, look, I think if it makes sense, we could definitely probably bring Ty into our conversation with the agenda building tool, if that makes sense. I think there's no reason we couldn't put more resources into this. I think we're exploring this week what the next tool is that we're likely to explore building. And I think off the top of my head, at least the one that I'm probably more interested in working on next with him is something around curating pilgrimage experiences for people. So you can go in, answer a few questions, and then it suggests your personal pilgrimage experience and then creates a bit of a framework for you to go and explore and make some suggestions and make some refinements and then map it out with potentially like the ability to print out your pilgrimage in this little booklet, so that if and when you decide to actually go on that pilgrimage, you don't need your phone to experience the pilgrimage. You can do it all offline. So I think that's potentially the next tool that we'll explore building.
I have a question about
Sorry, you cut out a little there. Sorry, you have a few questions.
I have a bunch of questions and thoughts about that project, but I feel like that might take us off track a little. It's a very interesting view. I think you were the one who talked to me about pilgrimage and its power. I mean, I think I've heard an early version of it.
Yeah.
That's what I think. That becomes cool.
Bridging new technology and old technology, and the pilgrimage is a very old technology. And again, it strikes me as one that is maybe misunderstood or not made available or accessible to an audience as broadly as it possibly could. So yeah, this might be just a little tool, but again, even if it just nudges half a dozen or a dozen people to go and do it, it far outweighs the time we've invested in putting it together. Yeah.
The term is so action is so infrequently done by your own region, American, say that a name like Pilgrim, the app was Pilgrim, called Pilgrim. It's so antiquated as a term almost that it's cool again. It's be a pilgrim. Like your when I went to elementary school, they taught us that our European ancestors were pilgrims. Okay, you're descended from pilgrims. Be a pilgrim. You're a pilgrim. You're still a pilgrim. How do you be a pilgrim? Let's design. It's like a more meaningful travel.
Totally, yeah. In fact, I think it was Stuart Brown of Whole Earth Catalog and Long Now Foundation fame was once asked the question, like, if you could change anything in the world, what would it be? And his response was, convert all tourists to pilgrims. Or make all tourism pilgrimage. And I really love that response. But yeah, just imagine the shift in places if more people traveled with the kind of intention or the perspective of pilgrim or pilgrimage. Yeah, it strikes me as quite a powerful tool and gateway to open up. Yeah.
So what? Obviously, there's the possibility to, and we could even use some of the remaining time to design an agenda for the next meeting, the next few weeks. Are there other things that you feel like are a gap between where we are right now and what we would need to start building?
At least with the kind of process we went through with Ty is we divided and conquered the tasks. So Ty was more on the build and I was more on the design and strategy and positioning. So having that clear divide of roles and responsibilities really moved things forward quite quickly. So I'd say that I know we've broadly spoken about that, but that strikes me as probably a good thing to clarify moving forward so that even in between our next call, our homework's a little bit more focused on those various approaches of looking at this problem. Yeah. And so like, I would say it's broadly build and then design creative side of things.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, awesome. So actually I think it's four aspects. It's automate, build, design, and then creative. And then creative is also how do you communicate this to the outside world. I'm definitely comfortable on the design and creative side and refining that tool set, which is different. So you've obviously got vibe coding, but also like vibe design tools are emerging right now as well. So there's a lot, but it's a very different set of tools than the build tools. And then having us coming together and bridging those two worlds, I think ends up being a really good workflow.
How are you distinguishing automate?
Sorry?
How are you distinguishing automate and build? What are those?
Yeah, the way I heard it framed was if you want to be a really good AI generalist, focus on those four aspects: automate, build, create, design, and then promote. And the automate piece is really figuring out the existing tools that we might be able to leverage to automate various aspects of the repetitive tasks that we might do. And then build is much more specifically, all right, let's build the thing that isn't already out there at the moment. Well, let's build the thing that solves for our specific use case. For instance, automate for our instance would be maybe making that extra step around taking these recorded videos and automating the process to get the transcription and then put that into Notion, which is a pretty well-worn path these days. But you set it up once and then you don't need to do it again. But as distinct to building something new, yeah.
It's interesting. It occurs to me that those roughly align with the job responsibilities of a CIO, taking care of internal IT that helps with the company operational.
Okay.
CTO. So the person
Yeah, and also I guess it's CIO, COO as well to a certain extent as well. So those kind of three are blended together in a sense: CIO, COO, and CTO. Yeah.
And then here the CIO and COO do the automate side, and CTO can be on the build side.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. At the moment, I don't think we've, aside from maybe the transcript editing thing that we've done to, I think they may be kicking Cafe. I don't think we have a lot to automate, but it's good to
Yeah, I'm also not attached to that as a framework, but I thought it was a good place to start. We can make it our own. But yeah, if you need to run, I completely understand. Let's regroup next week.
It does look like they're shutting it down. So I think that's my cue. It's a joy to see you.
You too. Many blessings and looking forward to our chat next week already.
Thanks.
Ciao.